There. My name is Cameron Collins. I'm here to talk about the opioid crisis in America that we discussed in class. This is a topic that I feel that really struck out to me personally. It really piqued my interest mainly because of the amount of deaths that drug overdoses were causing in this country and the relationship of that to actual prescription drug opioids here, something that you feel like wouldn't really be as abusive or something that you feel like wouldn't really be the big name, I guess is what I would call it here. You feel like, excuse me, that heroin or like, cocaine or some of these class Schedule 1 drugs here would really be taking off here. So uh, excuse me, that's my little bit background on that here. The history of opioids, I found that opioids were around for centuries. They were plants, essentially. They still are plants, essentially. They were found to relieve pain, stress, and up until the past couple decades here, we've realized that opioids can be used by big pharmaceutical companies into pills like hydrocodone, oxycontin, etc., to relieve these pain and stress and muscle, I guess, anything to get yourself in a state of mind here after surgeries and illnesses and other varying health issues here to really fast track you towards pain relief. And as we've seen, and as I will go into as well, that there's been a lot of issues with how we go about not only with the causes of opioids as well, but how they have skyrocketed into our public policy today. One of the a couple of the big problems here with prescription opioids is, as I sort of touched on a little bit, is that they are highly addictive. The way they work is they basically cut off the neuroreceptor to pain in your brain to basically stop all sort of pain, any sort of motion, anything like that, which then builds up tolerance because you're wanting to feel this euphoric high every time here. And then when you build up this tolerance, then you want to go doctor shopping, which is basically where after, say, for example, you come back from surgery and you're doing well, but you were prescribed opioids and you decide you want more, but your doctor won't fill you anymore. So you go to a different one, tell them that you have these problems, and they basically fill you more opioids. And as I was going back to the highly addictive part here, is that when it cuts off the neuroreceptors here and basically diminishes any pain, you build up a tolerance here that then causes you to take from one pill every 4 hours to two pills every 4 hours to four pills every 4 hours. And when this suppresses your pain, it also cuts off your breathing as well and slows your heartbeat. So this then reacts to your cognitive function and basically diminishes any sort of brain function at all, and then eventually leads to death. And the biggest problem that I'm going to dive into as well is prescription drug monitoring programs. My belief is that a big problem with prescription opioids is the keyword prescription here. And it starts out somewhere here. It starts with the doctor that then prescribes it out to someone who is in need of it or who needs the pills and then gets hooked on it and then is then put into a repeating cycle of prescription opioids. So the paper I decided to focus on was called The Implementation of Prescription Drug Monitoring Programs Associated with Reductions in Opioid-Related Death Rates by Stephen Patrick, Carey Fry, Timothy Jones, and Melinda Button. This paper was a study to perform to measure the success rate of prescription drug monitoring programs in America. They decided to look at all public data available of all states that had implemented legislation to start monitoring this prescription drug program, monitoring prescription drugs and the doctors that were prescribing it out, the patients that were receiving them, patients that went out to other doctors as well trying to receive these opioids here. And they measured this deaths and showed the results of per 100,000 people over a course of 14 years here. So, and as I've said it before here, this is relatively new to not only just my class as well, but new to America. The rise and epidemic of these opioid deaths have been completely skyrocketed since the early to late 90s here. Once they started getting implemented out into the masses, they were essentially told that they were not as addictive, that the side effects were not what they really seemed here, that this paper is not about or anything, but it's also one of the causes as well of why people kept prescribing these too. So to get into the results as well, as I said, they looked into all the states with these programs here and wanted to see if there was any effect of these programs actually against opioid-related overdose deaths. So back in 1999, there were absolutely no prescription drug monitoring programs whatsoever across the scale here. There were they counted 34 states without the prescription drug monitoring programs, and there was 1.36 deaths per 100,000 population. About 8 years later or so, they decided to recheck it again when they saw that the epidemic was skyrocketing. They then noted that states started implementing these programs. The number of states was at 11 with prescription drug monitoring programs, and they had 6.88 overdose deaths per 100,000, comparably to 23 states without the programs at 4.75. And the reason for this, you think that the numbers would be a little bit different, but the reason why this is because there are different anomalies within states. Then 6 years later, they then tested it again and showed these results from when they skyrocketed again, and that the epidemic was really taking over. Was the number of states with these programs were at 32, so a lot of states have finally gotten on board and really saw that the epidemic was really taking toll here. And the number of deaths per 100,000 population is 6.19 comparatively to the 2 states without it, which is New Hampshire and Missouri, with 6.50 deaths. So we can see off these results here that when prescription drug monitoring programs are in place, that there is tangible results and tangible changes with this here. Another chart as well from the study showed that there were about 12 to 14 states in the upper range of deaths per 100,000, from 7 to 22.3 deaths per 100,000. Obviously, we can see that West Virginia, Utah, and Oklahoma took the top 3. As we can see here, it's definitely become a problem over the past couple of years as well. So in conclusion, I think it definitely goes to show that my theory was right, that when you implement monitoring and you stop the problem from the core, which I believe is the prescription, apart from the doctors to the patient to the pharmacy, that you can see that when you are regulating this and really monitoring all this, that results do show that the deaths do decrease. And I feel like that's very important as well as we go through these next couple of years here. This the national scale is going to be trying to contain this opioid crisis. It's nothing like we've ever seen before. It's so simple to get and so easy to get. And that's going to be very exciting to see. But I feel like one of the main reasons why we're paying a lot more attention to it is because of the fact of how these are killing the very constituents that these elected officials are elected by and are voted into every year. And it's affecting their communities, it's affecting their hometowns. And it's really showing that when society is changing, that we need to change with it and understand the problems that we're facing at that time. So thank you.